And we're coming to you live from Denver, Colorado, the Mile High City, as they call it. Coming to you live on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as on most of your major podcast platforms, such as Spotify or even Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio. We're everywhere. We can be found just about anywhere, any time of the day or night. So, welcome to the show. I'm Chris Pardo. Whatever time zone you happen to be in, whether you're out on the West Coast or the early morning time zone or on the East Coast at 1 o'clock. We're right here to try to take care of some business, tell you about some baseball, and kind of talk about some college football too, because that's coming up real soon as well. So that's going to be the primary topics of our conversations today. We got three games that we're going to take a look at to let you know what the line movement is like and in which direction the pros are going. We got Kansas City against Houston, the Chicago White Sox against Toronto, and the Dodgers against the Padres. Those are the three games we're going to take a up close look at, see which way the line movement is going, and of course try to determine which direction the pros are going as well. So that's the story. Thank you again very much for listening. And as usual, what we do is before we get into this other business at hand, let's take care of what happened yesterday as far as sports are concerned, as far as gambling on sports is concerned, really. And there's only one really major sport that's working right now, and of course, that's Major League Baseball. The underdogs yesterday went 8-6. The dogs are starting to bark loud and clear once again. They did as the season first started in April. Through April, the dogs did very, very well. And then as we started going through May into June, July, and then into August, the favorites really, they just went crazy, went berserk, up into almost the 80% win bracket. That's how high they went up. But yesterday, the underdogs, they were kings, 8-6, including the Yankees, a plus on the plus side. The Yankees, with all the winnings that they've had over the past few days, 9-10 game winning streak, still got a plus 125 against the Braves. And of course, they did win. They held on for a 5-4 win. That's their 11th straight win in a row. Now, the Orioles, they were just a plus 112 against the Angels, and they lost their 19th straight game as they lost 14-8. The unders went 9-4-1. The favorites are 59% so far on the season, but in the month of August, the favorites at 66%. So to give you just a general idea as to how well August has been as far as the favorites are concerned. But again, overall, from day one, April 1st, through yesterday, the favorites are at 59% as a win percentage, 66% as a win percentage in August alone. The overs, well, they're at 50% right now, maybe a little over 50.1% if you want to look for some real accuracy in that direction. So that's the story as to what happened yesterday. There was no football yesterday. We had no golf starting up yet. That'll be starting up today and tomorrow. So kind of give you an idea as to all that happened yesterday. And as usual, we're going to take our first break because we have a lot to talk about. Let's get this break out of the way. So when we come back, we can look at the three teams we just mentioned before, kind of give you an idea as to what's happening with them. And also want to talk about college football as well, because got some interesting notes from a couple of guys that really know what they're doing. Because, this is what we call week zero in college football. It's just before the start of the season this coming weekend. And whenever we get into this period, I like to follow some guys myself. I mean, I'm not an expert, a total expert. You never know everything. You always have to kind of defer to guys who really know something else more than what you know. So looking at Chris Andrews, he's the South Point Sportsbook director, and also Paul Stone, who lives in Texas, and he's a very successful handicapper. Going to take a look at some of their thoughts and ideas as to the upcoming season in college football. kind of give you an idea as to which direction they're thinking of going as well. Once again, just trying to bring you as much information as possible to try to make it for you to be on the plus side when the season comes to an end. So let's get that first break out of the way. And like I said, if you've listened to the show before, we take 3 breaks in the show, but each one is of a 1-minute duration. So if that's the case, we'll be back in 1 minute. And welcome back. You're back in the sports wagering zone. I'm Chris Pardo. We're coming to you live right here from the Mile High City, Denver, Colorado, on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as podcasting on most of your major podcast platforms as well. And of course, if you want to get a hold of us, that's very simple too. Just send us an email. Send it to thesportswageringzone@gmail.com. If you have any questions about gambling or about the teams or methods or whatever, be more than happy to answer them for you. If you have any comments about the show, maybe we talked too much about something, not enough about something else, whatever the case, we like to hear from you, kind of get an idea as to what you're thinking about us, and we'll try to give you some thoughts and ideas on how to come ahead as each season comes to an end. So today, of course, you have 14 baseball games on tap. We're going to take a close look at 3. We're going to see where the money is flowing. Got to give you an idea as to which direction the pearls are going, as well as the line movement. There's an early game this afternoon. It's at 2 o'clock Eastern time. You got Kansas City against Houston. So let's get that out of the way real quick. So if you're interested in betting on that game, you can still get in on the game, because right now it's almost 10 minutes after 1, so you have just about an hour to try to get into business. So after the Royals stole that series opener 7-1, in that game, they were 225 on the plus side as road dogs. The Astros, they came back with a 4-0 shutout at Kansas City last night, cashing in as a minus 250 home favorite. Now, in this afternoon's rubber match, the Royals come back with their left-hander, Mike Minor. He's 8-11 with a 5.34 ERA. The Astros, well, they come back with their right-hander, Lance McCullers. He's 10-4 with a 3.21 ERA. As we look at the line in this game, it opened with Houston, a minus 210 home favorite. Kansas City, a plus 190 road dog. Now, the pros, they don't want to outsmart themselves in this particular situation. So what they're doing is they're laying the big chalk money with the Astros, as they did yesterday, who have far a much better record. They're at home, and they have a great starting pitcher, which is an advantage for them as well. Now, keep one thing in mind. When it comes to non-division home favorites, they are at 61.4% as a win percentage so far this season. Now, the big home favorites, now these are favorites that are minus 200 or more, okay, are at 72.5% so far this season. And that's because this huge, huge August that they've had. Houston is 61-39 whenever they're a favorite. They're 28-22, very good against left-handed pitching. Kansas City, however, they're 35-52 as a dog, which really isn't all that bad, and they're 36-51 when they're playing against right-handed pitchers. Now, Houston, of course, they're hitting big. They're at a .268 or 268 is their batting average, which is the best in Major League Baseball. The Royals, well, they're at 245, which ranks them in 12th position right now. Houston is 40-25 at home. Kansas City is 24-38 on the road. Now, the Pros have also hit the under in this game. They dropped that total down from 9 to 8.5. Keep something else in mind. The under so far in this series is 2-0 and has been 4-1-1 in 6 meetings so far this season with the Royals. So if you're looking to bet this game, again, it's a 2 o'clock Eastern time game. Royals against the Houston Astros. The Pros are on the Astros. They're going to be laying that big chalk money on it, but they're also on the under as well. Meanwhile, at 7 o'clock, you got the Chicago White Sox at 73-54. Playing the Toronto Blue Jays, 65-59. Now, these are American League playoff contenders. They split the first 2 games of the series. The Jays took that first game 2-1. They were -115 home favorites. And then the White Sox came back with a 5-2 win last night as +115 road dogs. Now, in tonight's game, the final game, Chicago comes out with their right-hander, Lucas Giolito, who's 9-9 with a 3.77 ERA. Now he's going to be up against Robbie Ray for Toronto, who's 9-5 with a 2.79 ERA. As we look at the line of this game, opened with the Jays, a -120 home favorite. The White Sox, they're a +110 home dog again. The public was like yesterday, they're split right down the middle. They don't know who to back in this game. However, we've seen the Blue Jays fall from being a -120 to a -115. So when you see that, it kind of means that the pro money is coming in on the White Sox, taking that plus money payout. And by coming in, of course, it dropped from being a +110 down to a +105 on the money line. Now, Chicago has value. They're a road dog. They have a line move in their favor. And we've also seen these late season dogs with a strong winning record, okay, which is like 550 or more, perform really well when you come towards the end of August into September. Now, these teams have cashed in roughly 48% so far over the past 10 years, and they've produced about 60 units. If you had been just playing that category, you'd be up ahead by 60 units. Meanwhile, Chicago also is really great against left-handers. They're 21-13 against them so far this season. So in this particular game, the Pros are staying with the underdog in this game with the Chicago White Sox. Once again, just to recap the first game, because that game goes off in less than an hour from now. Kansas City against Houston. This way, if you're interested in betting on it, just want to give you some information on that as well, in case you missed it. I'm just going to repeat it for you so you can hear it once again. The Pros are on the Astros, but of course, there's going to be some heavy juice that you're going to have to lay. But of course, if you don't want to go that way, but you want to go down on the over-under as far as runs scored, that dropped from 9 down to 8.5. The Pros are on the under. The under so far is 2-0 in the first 2 games of the series, and it's actually 4-1 over the last 5 times they played. So if you're interested in betting this game coming up soon, Houston Astros is the choice of the Pros. And also at 7 o'clock, the White Sox against Toronto. In that particular game, the Pros are on the underdog in that game once again. They're on the Chicago White Sox to win this game as well. So we have one more game left at 10 o'clock. the Dodgers against the Padres. But let's get that second break out of the way. And then once it's over, we can come back and talk about that game and also kind of bring you up to date as to how well this little method or system has been operating so far, how it did yesterday, how it's been doing over the past few days, so you can kind of get a kind of clue as to which direction the pro money is going. And then, of course, we're also going to be talking about college football. We're going to take a look at some thoughts and ideas of two very well-respected men. Chris Andrews, who's the sportsbook director at South Point, and Paul Stone, a Texas guy who lives in Texas, really well-respected handicapper as well. We'll get their thoughts on the upcoming college season. So let's get that second break out of the way. And as usual, like we say, we take 1 minute. So if that's the case, that's when we'll be back in 1 minute. And welcome back. Here we are. We're back again in the sports wagering zone. I'm Chris Pardo. We're coming to you live from Denver, Colorado, the Mile High City. You know, for many years we came to you from Charlotte, North Carolina. Kind of moved out this way. Wanted to watch my grandson play some baseball, try to get some look into that before it all comes to an end. You know, they grow up very, very fast. So if you've got some grandchildren out there or children and they're starting to participate in sports, you better get out there and catch them while you can, because believe me, you're going to blink an eye and it's all going to be over and done. Well, anyway, just to get back to what we've been talking about as far as baseball is concerned, we have talked about two games. So just in case you tuned in late and you're interested in that 2 o'clock Eastern time game, you got the Kansas City Royals against the Houston Astros. In that particular game, the pros like the Houston Astros. If you like the Astros as well, you're going to have to lay some heavy wood on that game, on 210, 220 up in that area. So if you're interested in the game but not in that kind of a number, what you could do is bet as far as how many runs are going to be scored. It started out at 9, dropped down to 8.5, and also keep in mind that the under so far in the first two games was prevalent. 2-0 so far as the unders are concerned. And whenever these teams played each other, they're 4-1, by the way, as well. So kind of give you some information if you're interested in that game, which goes off in less than an hour. Meanwhile, at 7 o'clock, we also talked about the White Sox against the Toronto Blue Jays. In this game, the pros are on the underdog in this game, the Chicago White Sox against the Jays. One more game that we want to look at for today. Around 10 o'clock tonight, Eastern Time, the Los Angeles Dodgers are 79-47. They're in San Diego to play the Padres at 68-59. Now, these two teams are National League Western rivals, and they're actually going in opposite directions. The Dodgers, well, they're 9-1 over their last 10 games, while the Padres, they're just 2-8. They kind of slipped off the horizon here a bit. Now, despite trailing first place Giants by 2.5 games, the Dodgers are still a minus 165 favorite to win the division. Okay, going to repeat that once again. They're 2.5 games behind the Giants. But if you were going to make a bet on the Dodgers to win their division at BetMGM, for instance, they're at a minus 165. They're still the favorite. Even though this was about a month or so to go, they're behind by 2.5 games. I guess most of the bookmakers seem to believe that the Dodgers are still going to be winning the National League West. But meanwhile, San Diego, well, they kind of dropped out of that second wild card spot, and now they trail the Reds by a game. The Dodgers took care of business in last night's first game. They won 5-2. They were a minus 140 as a road favorite. And in tonight's rematch, the Dodgers come back with their ace right-hander. Of course, they got a whole bunch of aces on that team. Walker Buehler, he's 13-2 with a 2.11 ERA. And San Diego comes out with their left-hander, Blake Snell, who's 6-5 with a 4.82 ERA. So we look at this line. It opened with the Dodgers, a minus 127 road favorite, and the Padres as a plus 117 as a home dog. Now, the pros, hey, they're riding that hot hand of the Dodgers. So they're in on the Dodgers to win again. They got their ace on the mound, and they steamed up the numbers from minus 127 as an open up to the last we looked at was minus 140 on the money line. Los Angeles is 78-44 whenever they are a favorite. San Diego, they're only 8-13 as a dog. Okay, the Dodgers are 22-13 when they're playing against left-handed pitchers. The Padres, they're just 46-45, almost to 50% when they're hitting up against right-handed pitchers. The Dodgers also have value because they're a favorite with a low total. The low total in this game is 8. And keep in mind that historically, when you have low totals, they usually benefit the favorite because there's going to be a fewer amount of runs expected, so they're more likely to be the better team that gets them. In other words, the better team being the Dodgers, more than likely they will do most of the scoring, but because they're up against a fairly good team also, the possibility of a low score is really historically the way it usually goes. So in this particular game, the Dodgers against the Padres, the pros are on the Los Angeles Dodgers. So just to take a look at this little system or method that we've been talking about over the past 3 or 4 years, to be perfectly honest, okay, since we've been allowed to start betting legally, although we did talk about it even when it was illegal because we had listeners that had accounts offshore, or perhaps they did business down the block with whomever they were doing business with. So just to give you an idea, yesterday we had 3 plays. Okay, we had the Rays over Philadelphia, and that was a win. We had Cleveland over Texas. Texas pulled that one out, so that's a loser. And of course, we had the Brewers over the Reds, and that was a winner as well. So yesterday we had 3 plays, 2 winners. So what happened now is over the month of August, we've had 64 plays so far. We had 38 winners. That's almost at 60% for the month of August. As far as going back to the beginning of the season, we're at 53.5%. Now, just to give you an idea as to how the numbers have been going, like I said, yesterday we had 3 plays, 2 winners, 1 loser. The day before that, we had 3 plays, 2 winners, and 1 loser. The day before that, we had 2 losers, just 2 plays that day. So we had 2 losers. And then the day before that, we had 2 winners and 1 loser, 2 winners, 1 loser. So it kind of give you an idea as to how the numbers are going, so that if you're interested in following the pros and which direction they're going, kind of gives you kind of an idea as to what's happening with that. So that's the story with the system. It's doing pretty good so far in this season. Once again, let me just recap the 3 games on tap for today. Kansas City against Houston. Again, that game goes off in a little over a half hour from now. The pros are on the Houston Astros, and also they like the under in that game. The White Sox against the Toronto Blue Jays. In that game, the Pros are on the underdog, the Chicago White Sox. And finally, the Dodgers against the Padres. The Pros are on the Los Angeles Dodgers in that game as well. So that's baseball. We're all done with baseball now for today. So let's concentrate on college football. So let's get that third break out of the way. And when we come back, going to give you some thoughts and ideas from Chris Andrews and Paul Stone. Chris is the sportsbook director at South Point, and Paul is a excellent, super well-respected handicapper. He lives in Texas, and that's where he handicaps from. So we'll kind of get their thoughts and ideas for the upcoming college season. So let's get that break out of the way. And as usual, we'll be back in 1 minute. And welcome back. Here we are. We're back again in the sports wagering zone. I'm Chris Pardo coming to you live right here in the Mile High City, Denver, Colorado, on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network. We're here every day, Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, Saturdays and Sundays, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So let's talk some college football. Let's start off with some thoughts from Chris Andrews. He's the South Point sports director. And here's some of the thoughts he has, because we're talking about Chip Kelly. He's no longer being touted because of his progressive new methods, with his creative thinking, his fast talking. But to his credit, he's found new ways to be boring, and of course, still banking some big numbers for himself. Now, in 3 years at UCLA, Kelly's record is 10-21. So he's in his fourth year. He's going to have a salary of $5.6 million. Now, if he has anything left in his think tank, it's going to show early in the college football season, because the Bruins are going to have a pair of games, once against Hawaii, which is by circumstance my alma mater, and LSU. Now, both games are going to be in the Rose Bowl. Of course, that's beautiful Pasadena, California. If you've ever been there, it's absolutely gorgeous. Okay, so Chris Andrews says that he's high on UCLA this year. He has had a checkered career, according to what he thinks about Kelly, but he did really well when he was at Oregon, if you remember those old days. Now, these are his players now. He finally, because he's been in charge of the team in 3 years, this is his fourth year, he's able to now have an entire team that he has chosen, and he thinks that this team is going to be better than most people think. The Bruins come back with 20 starters, 10 on each side, and their junior quarterback, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, is going to really trigger off that Kelly offense. UCLA finished 3-4 last year. Each lost by 6 points or less. So the Bruins do have reason to try to have a little optimism. Still, Kelly is not being paid like a king to be competitive and to blow those close games. He's being paid to do business. Hailed as a wizard, if you remember, when he arrived at Westwood, Kelly has really fizzled. Patience is starting to wear thin with the coach, who almost seemed invincible to the rest as when he was in the Pac-12 when he was Oregon. If you remember those days, he went 46-7. He had a 33-3 conference record from 2009 to 2012. Now, Kelly's quick detour through the National Football League, 3 years with the Eagles and one with the Niners, was really a failed venture, failed idea, as a wrong turn because he got fired under both instances. Now, in what is known as week 0 of the college season, Hawaii against UCLA is one of only 5 games on the schedule that Kelly has a good shot at coming back on Saturday. The Bruins are 18-point favorites against the Warriors. Now, the Warriors are coached by Todd Graham. Hawaii comes back with 18 starters, including their quarterback, Siobhan Cordero, from a 5-4 team that won a bowl game last year, too. So it may not be as big a pushover as people may think. Now, again, according to Paul Stone, who's a excellent super handicapper because he lives in Texas, he says, I would think Kelly needs to get a bowl game in year 4. Okay, from the standpoint of just keeping his job secure. He says the Bruins appear to have plenty of pieces on offense, but they have to get better defensively to turn some of those close losses into wins. Hawaii should be modestly improved in Graham's second season. This is only his second season. He was a rookie coach last year. Plus, this seems like a good spot to fade UCLA. Again, Stone says you should start to fade UCLA, laying this kind of a number with a really well-anticipated game against LSU, which is going to be coming up real soon as well. Now, Stone said that he took 17.5 points with Hawaii. That's who he's picking. The Bruins are 4.5-point home underdogs to LSU next week when the season really gets rolling. So he's going to have that looking in ahead. So that's why Stone kind of thinks he likes Hawaii and getting those 17.5 points. Now, Chris Andrews, who rates the Bruins as the 6th best team in the Pac-12, says there's always a surprise team. Chris thinks that UCLA could be that surprise team in the Pac-12. On his 100-point scale for power ratings, Chris has Alabama on top with a rating of 103. Now, that's not a big surprise, even after waving goodbye to 6 players who were picked in the first round of the NFL draft. The Crimson Tide opened the season as 18.5-point favorites against Miami, but that's going to be on a neutral field on September 4th when they open up in Atlanta. Now, it's Nick Saban, and he'll plug in another super athlete to replace the players who left. He says, left him to kind of put it this way. Nobody is beating down the door to bet against Alabama, and that's Chris Andrews talking. And, of course, he is the sportsbook director, like I said. Now, a Big Ten matchup kicks off this Saturday. Nebraska is a 7-point favorite at Illinois, and the dog has drawn a lot of money after the line opened at 8.5. Now, the Fighting Illini pulled the plug on the Lovie Smith era and replaced the former Bears coach with Brett Bielema, who won the Big Ten 3 times when he was at Wisconsin 10 years ago. Now, the Cornhuskers, they're 12-20. It's Scott Frost's first 3 seasons. A negative story has surfaced with Nebraska because they're under NCAA investigation. Now, there's been some controversy, and understand where there's smoke, there's fire. The investigation has potential to make the Cornhuskers a real dumpster fire so far this season. Now, for the record, okay, as far as Chris is concerned, he says that his college season is kicking off with 2 plays. Illinois is a 7-point underdog, and Hawaii is an 18-point underdog, and a couple more are going to be added by Saturday. Now, Fresno State, they're a 27.5-point favorite against Connecticut in a game with the least amount of appeal. Anytime Connecticut is playing Fresno State. These are teams that people have never even heard of before. Andrews puts a power rating of 45 on UConn, which is not really at the bottom of the pack. It's somewhere in the middle. The lowest teams on Andrews' scale are Texas of El Paso at 43, Akron at 42, New Mexico State at 40, Bowling Green's at 38, and Massachusetts is at 38. And again, in the Saturday night primetime game, it usually features, okay, elite teams from the SEC or the Big Ten or the ACC. Also, there's going to be this Saturday wagering on two oddball games. UTEP against New Mexico State, Southern Utah against San Jose State. Now, San Jose State opened against the Spartans, lose as a 21-point favorite offshore, although the game is not listed on the main betting rotation because the Thunderbirds are an FCS team from the Big Sky Conference. Okay, so that's kind of some thoughts and ideas as far as Chris Andrews, who is, like I said before, he is the South Point Sportsbook Director, and Paul Stone, who's a very well-respected handicapper who lives in Texas. So that's the story there. Kind of give you some thoughts and ideas as to which direction they are thinking, what they think the first week of 0 week will turn out to be. One of the things he's really interested in, they're both interested in that UCLA game against Hawaii. Hawaii's a 17.5, 18-point underdog. Stone loves Hawaii at this point. Looks like they're not giving Hawaii enough credit because they did have a very good season last year and they did win a bowl game. So they may not be that 17, 18-point pushover that everybody seems to think they have. Still trying to live off of Chip Kelly's name at UCLA. So that's the story as far as that's concerned. Once again, the 3 games on tap for today that we talked about in baseball. The pros have Houston against Kansas City. That's a game that's going to be starting in about a little over a half hour from now. And of course, we have the Chicago White Sox against Toronto. And we have the San Diego Padres playing against the Dodgers. In that game, the pros are on the Dodgers. And that White Sox-Toronto game, that is on the underdog, the White Sox. So just to give you an idea as to which direction the pros are going, which direction the line movement has been so far. So that's the story for today. Covered some college football for you. Gave you the 3 games for today, brought you up to date as to how the system is doing. So the day is pretty well done for us here at the Sports Wagering Zone. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. It's Wednesday. It's what we call Hump Day. It's the middle of the week. I hope you have a very pleasant day. And of course, if you're going to be betting, I certainly hope you have a profitable day as well. And we'll be back again tomorrow. We're here at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, coming to you live from Denver, Colorado, a mile-high city. Also, we podcast, of course. We're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, Spreaker, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, just about anywhere you can find us. And if you want to send us an email, just send it to thesportswageringzone@gmail.com. Be happy to answer any questions that you may have. So until tomorrow at 1 p.m., thank you very much for listening. We'll be back again tomorrow on the I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, have a pleasant Wednesday. And like I said, if you're betting, hey, have a profitable one as well. Goodbye, everybody.